Good afternoon, everyone. Welcome to the Happy Hour Live webcast from WhiskyCast.com. I'm Mark Gillespie. It's Friday, August 27th. It's taken me an entire week to recover from last week's webcast with the Bourbon Women. If you missed that one, please go back, watch the replay of it, or listen to the podcast this week because that was an absolute hoot. I am still waiting for bail reports out of Louisville this weekend from the symposium the Bourbon Women are holding this weekend. We will see what happens there, but had a great time last week with them. We're going to have a lot of fun this time around. Just a few minutes from now, I'll be joined by our pal Steve Beal, David Blackmore, and Ewan Morgan with some tales of the road, and we'll catch up on what those guys have been up to. Right now, I want to bring in Owen Martin, who's the head distiller at Stranahan's in Denver. How are you, Owen? Let's try that again now, just switching the microphones. How are you tonight?
Doing well. Happy Friday.
How are things out in Denver right now? Are you guys coping okay? And is the distillery open to visitors right now?
We are open to visitors. We've finally scaled back some of our tours back to where they were pre-COVID. And right now we're getting ready for our Cask-Strength event that'll take place in just about a month.
Tell us about that. What do you got coming up?
Yeah, so that one we pretty much pick 6 or 7 individual single barrels that are either experimental or fun cast finishes. Just kind of a wide variety of expressions that we can kind of show our range with. And we have this big event where we thief straight out of those barrels, straight into people's glasses. We do a pig roast over barrel staves, like whiskey ice cream collaboration. So it's just a big party. It's kind of like the opposite of Snowflake, where we're blending all these casts together. Cask-Strength is just about showing the individual expressions.
Can you give us any hints about this year's Snowflake yet?
Well, we didn't have one last year, so I've actually had one in blend since about last October. So as unfortunate as it was not to be able to do the event, the whiskey hasn't been getting any worse. So I blended in October thinking I was going to release it in December, give it to a couple months of marriage and back into the casks I dumped it from. And now it's been in there ever since. So I guess just as a hint, I'll just say it's a apple brand, various types of apple brandy base, apple brandy cast finished single malt, that is, with a few other fun casts thrown in the mix.
Well, you have an interesting one that is an experiment of sorts as well. Your Caribbean Rum cask that your colleagues were kind enough to send me a sample of, along with the Bushmills cask. But I'm sipping on this Caribbean Rum cask right now, and a lot of grilled pineapple, a lot of citrus in this one.
Yeah, citrus is one of the big notes I get as well. So yeah, this is the second in our exclusive lineup. Pour myself a glass as well. So I mean, the idea behind this and the Bushmills was that we kind of wanted to do lighter finishes to start out with. Something that lets the malt still kind of firmly be in the driver's seat and just accents that. Obviously we have our sherry cask finish. We've done port expressions in the past for limited releases and Snowflake components, and those are big, obviously almost overwhelming finishes at times, which we love. But for these exclusives, first with the Bushmills Irish cask, and then now with the Caribbean Rum cask, we wanted them to be, show kind of the malt and show what it has to provide, and then accent that with different, lighter finishes. So not to say we won't go dark down the line, but starting out, we wanted to try out a couple lighter finishes.
And this is a distillery exclusive, which means it's only available at your place in Denver, right?
Yep. Yeah. So we launched the Bushmills, I think in March or April, and that's sold out towards the end of summer. So we have the rum now. We're looking at rebottling the Bushmills again because we have enough casks to replicate that blend. But yeah, they're going super fast. We've done exclusive like single barrels that are only available at the distillery, but this is the first lineup of an actual blend that's exclusive to us.
And of course, we should note that Stranahan's and Bushmills are all part of the same Proximo Spirits Beckley family, which makes it real easy for you guys to get Bushmills casks, right?
Certainly does. And without hinting too heavily at other things, there's another blend I'm working on right now that uses Reserva de la Familia barrels. So again, using those kind of interdistillery connections to get very high quality barrels with pretty thriftily, I guess you could say.
Did the guys at Bushmills have a chance to taste this yet, or do you know?
Yeah, I think we did send some over. I think there was some in transit last I'd heard. I don't know if they've been able to try it yet.
And I've got some of this obviously as well. And I love this one because it's got some of that Bushmills flavor to it. A little bit of baking spices, completely different from the Caribbean rum cask. And I think that's really what you're going for with these exclusives, right?
Exactly. I mean, so with the Bushmills, again, it's just kind of highlighting different aspects of the malt, of the fermentation process that we use with our brewer's yeast, specialty grains, that sort of thing. So the Bushmills was a single malt from Bushmills, so we really wanted to double down on the malt character with that one. It's at our standard 47% ABV. One thing we wanted to experiment with the Caribbean, because it was light, kind of had that light ester profile we were talking about, was take the ABV down a tiny bit. So it's the first time we've ever done anything at 90 proof. Again, kind of to preserve that lighter, fruitier profile as opposed to the oilier, more malt forward Bushmills one.
And Steve Smathers is saying on Facebook that he bought and sent a bunch of bottles over to Ireland. Let's hope they made it through customs okay and made it through the shipping process.
Yeah.
We have a comment from H_Twan. Am I the only one who watches this on Twitch? You may be. We put it on Twitch, and tell your friends because I'd love to get more viewers on Twitch as well. We added Twitch after Periscope bit the dust earlier this year, and I'd like to get some more folks on Twitch watching this one. What do you think the next is going to be in this distillery exclusives range, if you can tell us without getting into trouble?
If I get into trouble, I'll deal with that later. But yeah.
It's easier to ask forgiveness than permission.
Exactly. So kind of continuing with this, we're kind of saving our wine barrels for other experiments for the time being. So I have some really stellar rye casks I've been filling. In fact, I just got a bunch more in. And as I hinted at, we have a range of tequila barrels we've been working with. So I think those both might be on the docket for next year. We're looking to do about 2 a year, I think is what the plan is. I think that gives us enough time to source ahead of time and make sure we're giving ample amount of time in finishing casks. Another thing I've been focused on with this series specifically is a more of extended maturation finishing time. So the Bushmills was almost 8 years old, nearly 4 of which was in the Bushmills cask. And the Caribbean rum cask was 2 components, a 5-year-old that also spent almost half its life in the rum cask, and then an 8-year-old that spent the last 6 months in the rum cask. So for these, especially, I want to give it a lot of time to integrate, a lot of finishing time to make sure that whatever the finishing cask is has certainly, really melded with our malt character.
Oh, and I got to ask you a tougher question right now. We've seen the stories about the wildfires and the drought out in the western U.S., and you guys are out in Denver. What are you being told by your grain suppliers about the barley crop this year and how it's going?
So we haven't heard anything specific to that. We are fortunate to source most of our barley from a very, very large maltster that's just down the road from us. You might have heard of them. They're in Golden. They make a lot of, Anyway.
Yeah. And they got a whiskey coming out too, I think. And
yeah.
I don't know if you guys had anything to do with that or not, but
hard to say. You got to read the print and read between the lines. But
yeah, they didn't say much in the news release, but one reading between the lines. Well, hell, there's a lot of, and we should talk about this. Go ahead and we'll talk about the Colorado single malt crowd, because there's a whole bunch of you guys out there who could have made this.
Yeah. I always say that Stranahan's obviously, and maybe American single malts in general, have bourbon as a big influence and have Scotch and, world single malts as a big influence. But I would argue that Denver, especially, or Colorado, takes craft beer as the third major influence for us. And I think that's one reason why you see so many single malts in this area, is just because of how entrenched beer and craft beer are in our area.
We have a question for you from Nick Kent, and we've talked about this before with some of your colleagues out in Denver. Does the altitude affect maturation differently to distilleries that are closer to sea level at all?
Absolutely. So I pretty much phrase it in that, think of the altitude more so as determining the dry climate. And so it's about the dry area we're maturing in, as opposed to Scotland or the Pacific Northwest, where you'll see proof go down. because of how dry it is here, we see proof go up. So our fill proof is 110. We've seen barrels, some of our older barrels up at 140. I would say more typically, we're dumping stuff closer to 120, at that 6-7 year mark now. So that's kind of the unique thing to us, is that we see a pretty steep climb. We see about the same angel shares, I think Kentucky does, maybe slightly less. I think we're 8-9% for the first few years, that tapers off. By the time we're getting like to 8, 9, 10-year-old, we're seeing about 3 or 4% a year.
How are the sales for the regular Stranahans going? And are you back to full 50-state distribution yet?
I believe we are, but I'm not the authority figure when it comes to that. I mostly just am the hermit in the back, dumping and filling barrels that they bring out every now and then. But I believe we're in 50 states. Our sales, I think, kind of riding the back of the Blue Peak release we started with about a year ago, have really started to climb lately. I think because our goal was to release, this 4 or 5-year-old Solera finished whiskey, but also have it be at a very approachable price point and a lower ABV, just kind of open the door to American single malts or people that hadn't had Stranahans even in a while. So that I think it's about $40. I've seen it as low as, I think, like 33, 34 at Total Wine. And I think with that, people kind of, keeping an open mind towards single malts, maybe hadn't had it, maybe had been turned off by the price point, and are starting to buy that, and then either hadn't had Stranahans in a while and jump back on, or are now kind of on board and then buying our yellow label, are coming to the distillery and buying exclusives. So yeah, we're on a pretty good trajectory this year.
It's good to hear, because there was that period a few years ago when Jess was still running the place, where you guys sort of got out in front of your skis a little bit and started trying to hit more states than you really had supply and inventory for, and then had to scale back a little bit.
Yep.
And it's good to see you guys have the inventory now to support 50-state distribution and some exports. Are you getting out into the export market now at all?
So we've been in Canada for a few years. I know we have explored the idea of going to the UK. I don't think we've done any batches specifically for that yet, but it's 2022. We're talking about UK and then maybe even other parts of Europe. So yeah, I mean, not only does our stock allow us to go back nationally, as you just mentioned, but not only that, but all our whiskey is 4 years and up now. Our yellow label is a blend of 4, 5, 6, and 7-year-old. Our first 10-year-old came out last year. So as you said, like, I can't remember what year that was where we sort of got ahead of ourselves, but I think we have the stock now, not only to put out well-aged whiskey, but to put it out nationally as well, which has been great.
I think it was in those years before Proximo took over.
Yeah,
like Jess was still owned the place, and at the time when you guys were still fairly young, but were trying to get out to every state, and then just didn't have the stock to back it up.
Yeah, probably 2010, 2011.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, Owen, we're going to let you get back to work now, because it's only, it's 3 o'clock out there. You still got a couple hours worth of work left. Bader has decided to join me, and promptly going back upstairs right now. But Owen Martin from Stranahan's, thank you for joining us. These are really good whiskeys. I'll have my formal tasting notes for them up soon at whiskycast.com. But can't wait to see the Snowflake release the first Saturday in December this year. And maybe we'll even try to get out there for it this year.
Yeah, let's talk closer then.
Okay. Owen Martin, thanks for joining us right now. That is Owen Martin from Stranahan's out in Denver, and we're going to let him get back to work and bring in our panel now. And here's where the fun starts. We're going to bring in 3 of the guys that have been around Scotch whiskey long enough to have their own age statements. Our pal in the upper right, Steve Beal, doing well and recovering and fighting pancreatic cancer. My brother, we are so glad to see you tonight. In the lower right, Ewan Morgan from the Diageo luxury brands, which means the luxury single malts, although I suspect they make him do a little bit of work for some of those other spirits as well. And David Blackmore from Glenmorangie and Ardbeg, down in the great state of Texas, where all is well and COVID doesn't exist. Right, David?
That's right. Yeah, nothing to see here. Nothing to see here.
Sorry about that.
Yes. rednecks.
Couldn't resist. Steve, we got to ask first of all, because I know you haven't done a lot of appearances on any of these whiskey interview shows that have popped up recently, but how you holding up, brother?
I'm doing okay. It's pancreatic cancer is hard to detect. Usually they get it too late, and the treatments are brutal, and it takes a lot out of you. But I don't look my best a lot of the time. I've been losing my hair, and all the bits and pieces are falling off. So, the energy hasn't been there. But I'm feeling pretty good right now. Been through quite a lot for the last 6 or 8 months, and I do some of these things not so much for the public, but I do have a lot of clients I do this with, talking about different products and things that are in development. So I'm keeping busy, but not as busy as I like to be or used to be, but I'm loving it.
Hey, at least you don't have to travel as much.
American Airlines calls me about every 3 weeks wondering where the hell I am. And I have 1 million frequent flyer miles with them, and they love me to use them. So it's very, it's.
They don't want you to use them because they can fill those seats with paying passengers right now, Steve.
Well, they were really good to me. I had a flight to Vegas earlier this year, and they cleared out the whole first class cabin around me, blocked all the seats.
Wow.
They treat me very well, and I love to it. I love to be back traveling. I've had to cancel trips to India, Australia, Taiwan, and I should be flying back from South Africa today. And just as I think COVID's kind of under control, I've had my 3 vaccines, and but then again, it just we can't get a handle on it, and I'm just hoping it does.
And you got the extra booster for those who are immunocompromised, right?
Yeah, and I give a shout out to Walgreens. I went online and they gave me the shot in 30 minutes after I signed up.
Nice.
They were perfectly good about it. So I'm a believer in science. If you work with whiskey, you understand what science is. And you realize
David is stuck down in Texas, where science seems to have been forgotten outside of the Austin area.
Texas, where science is a 4-letter word. Oh wait.
Well, you got your guns and marbles.
Anyway, yes.
And as our pal Crump points out, bleep cancer, absolutely.
Yes.
Cancer is a bitch that needs to be shut down once and for all. David, what have you been up to? We've had some comments about those cabinets behind you now. We got to hear the story behind you from Tabitha's going, those cabinets, she's in love with them.
So yeah, turns out what ended up being my last international trip before the pandemic hit, which was late 2019. I went off on a kind of jaunt around, where did I end up? Hong Kong and Singapore and the Philippines. And unbeknownst to me, as a kind of surprise to me, my amazing wife organized to have all this built as a surprise. So when I got back, I had this kind of, perfect timing as well. I've got my own whiskey speakeasy as soon as kind of lockdown happened.
And I got to admit, I love seeing that Ardbeg Moore bottle over off to your immediate left on the right side of the screen there.
Yeah. Unfortunately, this one is actually a dummy bottle. I do have a couple of full ones as well, but that one, that was the first one that came to hand. So, yeah.
And I love this comment from Tabitha. I've never met a whiskey drinker who's also a flat earther.
Yeah, right. Hey, listen, there's flat earthers all over the world, all around the world. Isn't that what they say?
So how long did it take your colleague, your carpenter that Rose got to build those things?
Pretty much the entire 3 weeks I was away. So, yeah, took him about 3 weeks.
And when we're talking about pancreatic cancer, we cannot pass the chance to raise a glass to our pal, the Scotch trooper, Brett Ferenz, who lost his battle. Steve, we know you are fighting, and you're about to hear a bang just there because the dog knocked over the fan.
Okay.
Come here, Bader.
Just to put in a word, pancreatic cancer is very hard to detect, and you might think you have a stomach ache. In fact, the first doctor who saw me should have realized that I had something else going on. But after that, it was pretty good. But I don't think there is a relationship to what I drink or anything like that. But I do know that people in our industry do have a higher incidence of it.
Yeah.
There's a couple of buddies of mine out there. Our Scotch Trooper friend three of us got diagnosed all about the same time. And we all have very similar stories about how, well, we couldn't find this sooner. And even then they still have trouble finding it when they look at me. So it's a toughie, but hang in there. I have to trust in science. I do. I'm not going to take any horse worming concoction or anything like that. I do. And so far, so good. I've had great doctors and great treatments. And to be real honest with you, I'm 3 months past my sell-by date. So I'm doing good, doing well.
And I want to point this out because your faith in science is not mutually exclusive with your faith in general. If I remember correctly, you're still an Episcopal priest, right?
I am indeed. And I love to point out that the first historical mention of whiskey, Father John Core, about 500 and some years ago, he was a priest, and he made, whiskey for the king. So I'm not out of step. A lot of people think it's kind of funny that I serve two spiritual worlds. But I think, personally, my faith is God gave us a brain and expects us to use it. So I do. And I'm very thankful for being able to be here all this time. I've done everything I've ever wanted to do except go to the South Pole, and I'm still working on that. So
we can probably figure out a way to do a whiskey tasting. You can go down and find Shackleton's hut down there. Well, dig up what Patterson put back.
I have got a couple of bottles of of Patterson's version of that, and interesting whiskey. And but I'm really, really thankful for all the support I get from the whiskey community. When we all started, all three of us, it was a very small or kind of organic. I hesitate to say brotherhood, but back then it kind of was. A very small fraternity, and we'd run into each other everywhere we went, have a drink, try to pinch off of each other's expense accounts whenever we could.
Good luck trying that with Morgan. No chance.
But
good job. This isn't a family show, Blackmore.
Hey,
it is. Mark, it's just a dysfunctional family show, Ewan. It's okay.
Mark, little known fact, Mark. Did you know it must be something about having worked for Diageo or working for Diageo? There's more than one ordained minister on this call right now.
Oh, really? I did not know this.
Mr. Morgan himself, I believe.
Yeah, I am an ordained minister. Although, Steve, plug your ears because you're probably not going to approve of this. I got ordained as a minister for two reasons. One, to get my vaccine early. Two, I got a clergy parking pass, and it's a game changer.
Oh, hey, good for you. I mean,
Thanks for bringing that up, Blackmore.
You're welcome.
Wait a second. What church ordained you, Morgan, for crying out loud?
Well,
what church?
He's some sort of devil worshipper for sure.
No,
it's got to be.
I know there's these internet churches out there, but
incorrect. Universal Life Church. I can marry people. There you go. But you know what? I haven't had a parking ticket since I got that pass. So God bless the God.
Universal Life Church. Is that the same lot as the Universal Whiskey Experience?
No.
No.
Although it's still pay to play.
I knew this was going to degenerate quickly.
Oh, dear. You're Morgan.
And H. Twan sort of agrees with me on that one. And as Crump points out, it can be a dysfunctional family as long as we don't act like a West Virginia family. Stop that right now, Crump. Crump's from Virginia, so they hassle the West Virginians all the time. So, Ewan, what have you been up to besides doing all these Zoom tastings? How hard was it for you to adjust from traveling around the country to doing Zoom work?
It sucked. in a nutshell, I went from traveling 80% of the year to traveling 0. Albeit my travel did start back up in August of last year, so I have been getting out and about a little bit. But
Wait a second. Wait a second. Did it suck more for you or for your family to have you at home?
Probably my long-suffering wife. First week of April last year was the longest I'd been home in over 10 years. Yeah. So it turns out we actually love each other. We're still married. Things kind of worked out. So yeah, it wasn't so bad. And I learned how to do different things. I learned how to make watches. So I became a watchmaker. I learned how to play piano. I became an ordained minister. I got really fat and I had to lose all the weight. I'm in the middle of a thunderstorm.
You see, that's him up there.
That's
No,
God.
that's God. Yeah, that's God coming after your ass.
It's the parking pass. He's coming back for it.
Probably gonna hit my car with lightning now.
And great, as Tabitha points out, she can talk crap here as well as on YouTube. So Tabitha's double fisting with the channels right now and just going YouTube and Twitch and hassling people on both.
Yeah, but in answer to your question, Mark, it was a little bit of a struggle. We did adapt, though. We did many hundreds of Zoom calls and trained lots of bartenders. And, there was still a sense of community out there. A lot of whiskey clubs came together, as you well know. And a lot of companies got interested in whiskey. And, I get to do those things as well. And I think Pixar is the next one I'm doing. I think, Steve, you do stuff for them as well. They're very nice folks. So people just got a genuine interest in it. People went.
Wait a second. Pixar's doing a whiskey tasting?
Pixar does a lot of stuff. I got
they have a whiskey club.
We got a big event in Napa tomorrow that I'm going to, and Rob Rowe, who runs Pixar, is a very close friend. And there's wine. We have all kinds of. It's a charity event. It costs a fortune, and groups are having lunch at all these different wineries, and then we get together for a massive tasting and charity auction. And a few people in our industry are coming out, particularly from Kentucky this year. So I don't know who, but you know them all, and it's going to be quite an event. There'll be several hundred people. That's tomorrow. Pixar is a terrific company.
Yeah, they're great. I'm getting auctioned off tomorrow, apparently. So they told me.
I think so. I think I saw that.
Yeah.
You going to do gardening work or what?
Yeah. How did you guess? I'm quite good with the old shears. I'll do your garden for you, Mark. How big is your garden?
You don't want to know. Plus, you got to clean all the dog crap out of it.
All right, I'm out.
He's too old to be the pool boy these days.
Yeah, I don't.
Those days are,
I'm not down with toxoplasmosis. Thanks.
Oh, Lord.
David, tell us what you've been up to trying to, now that, David, when was the last time you saw Lumsden in person?
Oh, gosh. You might be surprised to know I actually miss him. But yeah, last time I saw him in person, probably middle of 2019. And we had a plan to have him in the States in about a week or two from now, and that obviously is the companies put our companies put higher travel freezers back in place with the way the Delta variant's going, and that's actually affected me as well. I'd started traveling, had a few trips to DC, a few trips within Texas. I was supposed to be in Scotland now. I had trips to Mexico planned and a trip to Berlin as well, and it's all stopped, grinding halt again, all of it. So dusted up all the camera equipment, set it all up again, and I think we're back to that for the next few months.
I agree. I mean, technically, we're supposed to take this show to the American Whiskey Convention in Philly 2 weeks from tonight, and I have to admit, I'm still not 100% sure I'm really ready for this yet, because they've offered us the chance to set up outdoors, but with my luck, if we say that, it'll rain, which will make it just as impossible. Yeah.
I mean, we're planning on. I'm planning on being at quite a few of the whiskey festivals that have kind of resurrected their schedules for the rest of this year. But who knows? Who knows if they're actually going to happen or not? I don't think any of us know the answer to that. So,
Steve, you've been judging in whiskey competitions for a number of years now. How hard was it for you to, or were you even able to judge in IWSC and other stuff this year?
I was chairman for World Whiskey for the IWSC all year, but I didn't get to go. But they've managed to do it, reorganize how they do things, and did fairly well with it. And I was online with them while we're doing it. I did the San Francisco competition, which was very COVID friendly. We spread it out over a number of days and had very few people, everybody vaccinated, partitions between the judges. Then I've done a lot of the independent sort of smaller ones where we do it by shipping the bottles like you all do with the Zoom tastings. And that was a big it was worked like the ACSA, I had 200 or 300 American whiskeys. By the way, really good single malts. These guys in the US are really cranking it. But that was an enormous pain in the butt to open all those little bottles. And, I've got hundreds of glasses, but, I was just constantly doing that. And then I'm scheduled to go to Las Vegas in October for the Las Vegas Global Spirits Awards. And it's very COVID friendly. They've got, again, the partitions and the travel, and American Airlines is helping me get in a nice little space in the plane to go there if I feel up to it. San Francisco competition was bigger than ever. The IWSC was bigger than ever. And I would be doing one in Australia sometime this fall if I could go, but Australia is locked down tighter than you'll ever believe. They're really having a problem. Australian whiskey, by the way, is really going crazy.
Oh, yeah.
One of the things I've really enjoyed, though, is there's a lot of fake stuff out there. A lot of counterfeit whiskeys. Some Scotch, a lot of bourbon.
You don't say.
And I've had people, being offered these products. And so I've become a forensic whiskey expert. And I'll tell them this is not really XYZ Van Winkle or Weller or, some of them are real though. So I've enjoyed the samples. But it's turned out to be a little bit of a sideline that I never expected. And that's led to other producers sending me stuff just for my opinion. So what do you think of this? What do you want to do about this label? Are we saying the right things? Worked on like 3 Irish whiskeys. They always have, everybody has trouble because I say my rule number 1 is you have to be completely transparent and tell the truth. Well, what if we can't tell people where we got the liquid? I said, well, if they find out where you got it or they speculate where you got it, you're going to not sell any of it because they're going to get you. So just be open and honest and do what you can to keep from appearing to be, a charlatan, and you'll probably be okay. And some of them have taken that advice. Others have sort of backed off. The celebrity whiskeys, I've had 4 or 5. They're going to buy some juice somewhere, put their picture on the label and have some fun with it. Some of them are really good. Some of them are awful. And, they don't like hearing that, but hey, nobody's going to hear what I say because I sign an NDA with everybody. So,
and they make crappy movies too. So they're used to getting bad reviews.
Some of them do. Yeah. Some of them do. 6 degrees of whatever. It's very interesting. People buying distilleries. It used to be they bought wineries, and it's kind of passe. So now they're putting their name on a distillery. Some of them do really well. A certain gin company, for example, that guy it's a great product and he's done well. And a couple of the Diageo people, I really admire, what they do. Again, not so much whiskey, but other kinds of brands.
Hey, there may be a distillery in Bardstown up for sale here soon. because the owner just pleaded guilty in the Operation Varsity Blues case. And technically, Kentucky law says if you have a felony conviction, you can't hold a liquor license.
Huh. Wow.
So I'm still waiting for confirmation on that, but there might be a distillery for sale in Kentucky here at some point for some celebrity to buy into.
Okay.
Interesting.
This chat just got way spicier than I thought it was gonna.
Yeah.
Well,
This is interesting.
you can pass this on to the Distill Ventures guys, and they can jump in on it.
I could.
Yep,
I'm not gonna, but I could.
And Tabitha's going, can we club together and buy it? No, probably not. We're not going to do a GoFundMe to buy a distillery, guys. Not happening.
I think my ultimate boss has got a few euros kicking around, right? He might be.
Yeah, your boss is now the richest guy in Europe. Is your ultimate boss, right?
Richest man in the world, on and off, depending on how his stock profile looks.
Depending on who's counting these days, but that doesn't get you the corporate jet, does it?
Doesn't get me the corporate jet, that's for sure. No.
No, we were talking beforehand about this this trip of a lifetime that you and I went on, that you graciously invited me to go on a few years ago, where we went down to Tuscany for the started out in Scotland and then went down to Tuscany for the launch of Glenmorangie Artine.
It was a tough one, wasn't it, Mark?
That was a tough one.
Really,
it was in February, but it was southern Italy. I mean, it was Tuscany in Italy, and even in February, it wasn't bad.
You know, the things we have to do. You know, the things we have to do. It was just such a challenge to go to Scotland, stay at the Balmoral. You know, go up to the distillery, then fly.
No, we didn't stay at the Balmoral. We stayed in one of those Rocco Mediate things.
Yeah, well, I did. I stayed at the Balmoral. No, we
You stayed at the Balmoral.
We stayed at the Balmoral, definitely, because I remember standing on the steps of the Balmoral at about 4 a.m. waiting for
all those Scottish hotels look the same.
Yeah, well, we did. Anyway, and then we got to Pisa. And Mark, do you remember that hotel we stayed in Italy? Where, I mean, I just don't condone this at all. But, you know, imagine, you know, a collection of the world's wine and spirits writers all together in a hotel in Italy with a blank check.
Charlie McLean was there, I think. Me. Joel, I think Liza was there. Liza Weischuck was there. And Lumsden was there, of course.
Yeah. And does anyone want to guess how long it took until we had emptied the hotel bar, of every single thing they had? Every single thing that was of liquid form was gone. Didn't take long. And then the next day, Mark, the transportation up into the Tuscan hills was a fleet of chauffeur-driven Mini Coopers, so we could do the Italian job type of thing. And we had lunch at Ornellaia, and then dinner then a barrel tasting at Tenuta de San Guido, and then on to a castle somewhere in Tuscany with a piper we'd flown in from Edinburgh. It was tough, really tough.
We actually have.
It feels like you're about to start a slideshow talking about this holiday you've had.
Well, no, actually, we've got a video of this thing on the WhiskyCast HD channel on YouTube and on our website, because one of the fun things I did was, while we're riding in this Mini Cooper, I've got my hand sticking out the side holding the camera while I'm recording a stand up straight to the camera, talking about this while we're driving in this Mini Cooper in February in Italy with the windows open. And David's in the back seat. We're all cracking up laughing because we're freezing our butts off, because because this thing is so small that I've got to have my arm out the window to shoot it.
Also, you know, Mark is not a small man. I am not a small man. Both of us and two other people in a Mini Cooper. It's like a clown car. The doors were going to fall off.
Fortunately, the driver, she was real small.
Yes, but that was some trip, hey.
Were you living up to your nickname as the Ginger Whinger, Blackmore?
I was not whinging in any way.
I don't believe
We're going to get into nicknames shall we, Humpty?
Okay, Steve, you've been doing this stuff for longer than all of us. You were one of the original Diageo masters of whiskey. What is the craziest thing that ever happened to you on the road?
We were, as a group, visiting Belfast. Went out to Bushmills for a couple of days and saw the Giant's Causeway. And, one of our ambassadors, a lovely guy, but a bit ego-driven at the time. We're on a Flybe jet, which is a very dodgy thing back then, flying back to the UK. And we're halfway down the runway, ready to take off. And he stood up and shouted, "We have to go back to the gate. I've left my camera at the gate." And I thought the whole plane was going to... I think he should have left a couple of drinks back at the gate too. But it was very... but a lot of crazy stuff. I've had some great stuff, though. Like a couple of years ago, I was invited to do the Michelangelo tasting competition in Cape Town, which is probably the premier first-class spirits competition in terms of the quality of the show. They put you in a 5-star hotel and give you a BMW with a driver, and every day they do the early part of the day at a different winery with a Michelin quality restaurant, and then you do your work in the afternoon doing the spirits judging and the wine judging. They're all together, and then at night we go to yet another place for another 5-star meal and top quality South African wine, which is amazing. And I found South African whiskey absolutely brilliant. I wish we had more of them. I found South African brandy incredible. But I loved going out there and getting in my own little, BMW, sitting in the back and being driven through the Stellenbosch, through all the vineyards. And it's absolutely stunningly beautiful. And the hospitality couldn't be better. I really recommend it. And I would be there right now if it weren't for COVID. They don't have enough vaccine in South Africa, so lots of people are getting wormed. And I don't know.
It's just like ours.
Just choke.
I don't even know what. I mean, Ewan, I hope you don't have to. We don't lose the connection here with you doing the spit take into your keyboard there. But
I'm all right now. Thank you.
Science rules, guys. Don't use deworming stuff to try to fight COVID. It just doesn't work, guys. There's a vaccine for this stuff. Take it, for Christ's sakes. Pardon my language, Steve. Ewan, what's the craziest thing that ever happened to you on the road?
So,
you and I have not gone out on the road together, so that's why I have to ask this stuff.
Yeah, 90% of it I definitely cannot say on this social medium, or I'd get fired. You have nothing to lose but your dignity here, Ewan. Yeah, I don't have any. So
and his livelihood.
I don't know, hanging out with lots of celebrities. I worked with Jude Law, Keanu Reeves. Just recently, I worked with Matthew Rhys, the actor who plays Perry Mason. I'm going to be doing some more work with him. Lots and lots of late nights. Nearly getting into a fight with Keanu Reeves. Nearly getting into a fight with Sean Penn. Lots.
Wait a second. Keanu Reeves is supposed to be one of the nicest guys around. How the hell did you almost get into a fight with him?
Oh, no, Keanu Reeves was nice. Kiefer Sutherland. That's where things got spicy. That was in the Spotted Pig in New York. Can't say any more.
Wow. He
likes J&B. That's what he drinks.
I've got one for you. I had a Chinese gangster charge the stage I was presenting on and try and attack me mid-presentation. Long story, but yeah, he was wrestled to the ground by hotel security. But yeah, I'd never been to that city before, let alone met that guy.
I went to the seminar. A lady screamed at me that I was a merchant of death. That was interesting. Quite why
Awesome.
she was at a whiskey show, I have no idea, but there you go.
Brilliant.
She was the designated dumbass.
I know. And I'm an ordained minister as well.
Of course.
Hey, David, I got to ask you to show us the your soccer trophy, your
Oh,
football trophy.
This thing, the Ardbeg Day 2014. Not the World Cup trophy at all, because that would be, we'd get sued for that. It's nothing like the World Cup trophy. So this was Ardbeg Day 2014. That happened to be the same year as the Soccer World Cup, the Football World Cup. And I ended up in Taipei for Ardbeg Day that year. And I love Taipei. It's always, every time I go, it's, hold on tight. There's going to be some craziness, but lots of fun. And that year, they decided that they wanted to recreate what they were doing on Isla, which was peat bog football. So they got a really big kind of portable above ground swimming pool and set it up in this warehouse that we were doing the whole sort of event, right in the middle of it, with ring seating all the way around. And they filled it full of the sort of peat you'd get from the garden center in big bags, lots and lots of it. Added a hose pipe, made it to this kind of slushy, slurry swamp, and then got me to play peat bog football against two really famous TV celebrities from Taiwan, who I didn't recognize at all. But that was quite an interesting day. Thought, I'm getting paid to do this. What's going on?
And as Tabitha points out, if a trophy can't be used, go
I
ahead,
think there's
Ewan.
specialized internet sites that have that video still streaming, David.
Probably. The funniest thing was they hadn't really thought this through. So, me in 100-degree Taiwan heat, running around in the top they'd got me, which was a double XL for Taiwan style, but was like the equivalent of a medium for most people in the West. So I was stuffed into this top like a sausage, running around in a peat bog, covered in peat. And then at the end of it, I was like, oh, gosh, I'm exhausted. And they said, no, for 5 minutes over there, you're leading a seminar. What? So, it's good fun.
I love this comment from Tabitha. If a trophy can't be used for drinking out of, what's the point?
None whatsoever. You're absolutely right. Completely pointless.
And as Crump points out, football, an organized sporting event simply created to give the British an excuse for a riot.
Well,
notice we've got a couple of Scotsmen in here, so.
The only reason, I'm convinced the only reason that Scottish football, soccer fans are usually pretty well behaved when we go off around the world is to just because we want to be different from the English. That's it. Well, if the English are going to riot, we're going to be well behaved. That's it. So you can thank the English for that.
I'm saying nothing. My wife is English, and she's watching this. I love the English.
I do too. But I mean, there is a contingent of English football fans who, they go to Europe and it's the first time they've ever seen outdoor seating at a restaurant or a bar, and they think those plastic chairs are just for throwing at people. Controversial.
Oh,
touch
Jesus.
xenophobic there, Blackmore. I hope
hey,
you're watching this.
I'm born in Scotland, but I'm actually English, so there you go. True story. So I can say that. I'm allowed to.
That's a good back pedal.
It is.
Yeah, you'll go over well when you go home and they see this. Oh, that's right, David. You are, yeah. Mm-hmm.
I said my family were English. I don't know what that was.
Love everybody. That's my
Steve,
motto.
I want you to give us some of the stories from back in the day when you were first starting Diageo Masters of Whiskey, when you were one of the first Masters of Whiskey, because this was before whiskey became cool and before David and Ewan got these great jobs traveling the world. You were sort of the predecessor, the OG, if you will, of the brand ambassador crowd. Well, you sort of paved the way for these guys, didn't you?
I started out, I weighed about 150 pounds less, standing up in a bar in a kilt on the bar, flogging Red Label, Johnny Walker Red Label, and it was a program we called Painting the Town Red. And we went from bar to bar to bar, and a lot of them were gay bars, so it was kind of interesting getting up on the bar with your kilt and having people try to figure out what you're wearing under it. And anyway, we went that, and it was fairly successful. And then in 1997 and 98, we started doing something called WhiskyFest. I worked for Shefflin in Somerset, who imported Johnny Walker and the classic malts and Dewar's and a whole lot of other stuff. And we'd rent out these fabulous spaces and do our own sort of, whiskey fests by ourselves, and, haggises and bands and, craziness and people in kilts. And, sadly, we called them booth babes back then, but lots of models. There were 4 of us who were involved in that, and ultimately 6. And people like Rick Edwards were there, and Marcy Rudeschausen, she was a senior master as well. And we really worked for Johnny Walker because Johnny Walker was the best-selling Scotch in the world, still probably is. And they wanted to get a visible footprint out there. So we traveled all over the place, and I'd go to any major city with 1 or 2 of the other people, and we would do this journey of taste, we called it at one point. It was always a journey because we'd show them 5 or 6 single malts that are constituents in the Walker blends, and then we would show them 4 or 5 Johnny Walkers, and it was a big piss up, frankly. And everybody seemed to enjoy it, but we really, really made a big dent. We made them in the first year of that program a $20 million profit because we spread the good news of hand-to-hand, totally hand-to-hand combat with these live programs. And they were death by PowerPoint. There was nothing like we do now, nothing fancy. We just like slides shown in the back. And there would be pictures of us on our many trips to Scotland and, digging the peat in Isla, and, all these guys have done this too. So they knew it, but we were the first ones. And we're the first company actually to hire brand ambassadors in the US from the US. Usually we'd be flying Scottish distillers over, and those days Diageo would send them all first class. So it was expensive and time consuming, and it took them away from their work back home. And they thought, well, we can do this a little better by having some, local talent. And they literally trained the hell out of us. I think the first year, 3 or 4 trips to Scotland, visited every distillery we owned, many of which were not open to the public. And it was incredible. Made a lot of good friends. And 1999, I was at one of the first training programs at Royal Lochnagar Distillery with Nick Morgan and Charlie McLean, and Jim Beveridge was there. All the leading lights, and we're just sitting around the fire, smoking cigars, drinking very expensive whiskey, shooting the shit about all these distillery stories. And you put Nick Morgan and Charlie McLean in the same room together with a cup of drinks, and it's crazy. It's absolutely crazy, and there's a whole lot of stuff.
I've seen that liquor cabinet at Royal Lochnagar. It's legendary.
Yeah, we were the very first to do that, and they helicoptered us around, to various places, and again visited Isla and visited Talisker and all the classic malts and then some. I still have a terrific fondness for Royal Lochnagar. To me, it's a brilliant whiskey. And
that's what this is.
Wow, great. One of my favorites though, Evan Katnack was one of our mentors. He's really kind of the guy who put the whole thing together.
Just raise a glass to Evan.
And he, we spent a lot of time at Cardew before it was really a tourist center, and it was just amazing. And he was full of stories that you would never repeat. But he was just absolutely amazing. And then we started doing these whiskey fests. Whiskies of the World was one of the very first ones. And Evan came to San Francisco for a couple of weeks, and I have never had a worse hangover in my life and he didn't have a headache. We went everywhere, drank everything with everybody, and it was just amazing. He taught me so much, not just about making whiskey, but about selling it, about sharing it with people. And he'd always say, it's the story, And I equated that with Simon Sinek's idea of the story of why, because we all make whiskey. We all start with barley, we all ferment it kind of the same way with sometimes the same yeast. And then we all distill it twice in a similar sort of equipment and then put them into the same kind of barrels. So how we do this thing and what we do, it's interesting enough to a lot of the geeks out there, but it's really how it tastes. People drink what they taste, not what they think. And so, well, some at least. And I learned a lot about that. And then, it got to be where there were so many of us, we couldn't go over there as much. We were a bit pretentious back then. We were at Shefflin, we were also part of Moet Hennessy, and our Shefflin overlords were French. And they wanted us to be treated as real ambassadors, not as promo people. So they had a rule that we'd arrive and we weren't allowed to carry our own bags. And I'll tell you, that caused so much shit with liquor salesmen. It was like, you what? You won't carry your own bag? It's like, I never heard of that. You get salesman's shoulder from carrying a sample bag for Diageo because there's so much in it. But we were supposed to be escorted in with a red carpet and treated like royalty. And sometimes it worked, but a lot of times it didn't. But it was a great fun. I probably visited 40 or 50 cities the first couple of years and did a couple of dozens of those Journey of Taste programs and got it down. Then we kind of expanded our profile. We bought a bunch of Seagram's properties, and we couldn't keep the Scotch, but we kept the bourbon and the Canadian and the other stuff. And so all of a sudden we became, instead of Scotch masters, we owned the title Scotch masters, but the ex-Scotch masters who went to work for Pernod kept the title. So you'll find some of them out there who still call themselves masters of Scotch, even though it was really a Diageo creation. But that's okay. They were trained by us and they know what they're doing. So anyway, we switched to bourbon and began working on, Bullet, which was a tiny little brand, 50,000 cases with no advertising budget. And we put that in our sample bag and just, this makes cocktails and it's $20 a bottle. Okay. And all of a sudden it's now almost $2 million brand. So a 2 million case brand. And it was all hand-to-hand combat. No advertising, no fancy schmancy, agency stuff. It was all really about one person at a time. And so it was great. I'm, had 20 years of that. And it still continued somewhat. So I got a lot of friends all over the place. I have this philosophy: a rising tide floats all boats. I don't know very many whiskeys I don't like. There's some I wouldn't drink a lot, but I appreciate what they're doing. I love the small folks who've mortgaged their grandmother's house, like Rick in just outside of Washington, D.C. in Virginia. They bought an old apple orchard and built an apartment in the farm and built the stills, and the stills heated their house in the winter, and their tasting room was their living room which you watch the football. This is Rick Wasman.
Copper Fox.
Yeah, in the beginning, the whiskey is, something to be desired, but it's
gotten better.
It's a lot better.
It's a lot better. I think the term that I learned from Dr. Lumsden when he's been given a lot of stuff to taste and asked his opinion. If he can't say anything nice, he usually goes, interesting.
The other thing you have to say to Bill is, if you're with him in person, just mention the word pantyhose.
Yes. It's one of his favorite words.
He will know exactly what we're talking
Yes. Well, I mean, thankfully we didn't
for-
have Bill on this, because if we'd had Bill on this and and Mark, you'd asked Bill for the craziest story, I think we'd have broken the internet.
I thought we did last year when I had him and Patterson on the same time.
Oh God.
Yeah, you know, I briefed Bill on things that he shouldn't say. So on that one.
Okay, so
not ready to retire quite yet, Bill.
We've had a couple of comments here about Ewan's background from Dave Kuhn. A lot of Orphan Barrel back there.
Yeah.
And that room looks really fun because Ewan, in the last few years, you've really sort of taken the Orphan Barrel line. I just had the Copper Tongue and posted my tasting notes for it recently. But you've sort of taken on the role of Orphan Barrel lead guru, right?
Yeah, I launched it back in the day. I launched Orphan Barrel and then helped pick all the whiskies for it. So yeah, I've been very heavily involved in Orphan Barrel from its onset. And you can see some of them behind me. There's more through the house. And then up here, we have some like old stuff, old White Horse, because I'm obsessed with White Horse. And old black and white bottles up there as well. The Cardew Pure Malt, the controversial one over there. I'm going to Google that and see how interesting that story was. And then we move all the way over here. We have Johnny Walker Oldest, the precursor to Blue Label. And then up here, I can't show you what's up here. I have a lot of innovation stuff. I work on
that Johnny Walker Oldest was the one that got you guys in trouble in Taiwan, right?
Yeah, thanks for bringing that up.
Sorry.
So we can talk about Pure Malt and Oldest. But yeah, tell us the real story behind Old Blowheart. Yeah, it's old bourbon. I'm gonna stop there. But yeah, we're very happy with this project. People love it, and you know now we've branched out and we have scotches in there. And the next one can't really tell you about, but might not even be a scotch, might not even be a whiskey.
Well, the last one was Copper Tongue, was a 16-year-old Tennessee whiskey from Dickel.
Yep, Cascade Hollow Liquid, very very delicious. It is too. Yeah, put together by Nicole Austin down there, did a wonderful job of it. But yeah, we're always out and about looking for interesting things to add to that.
I don't say this very often, Ewan, but whatever you guys need to do to keep Nicole happy, open up the checkbook because she is worth it.
Yeah, she's a force of nature for sure. Another fiery redhead. So yeah, she's something else. She does a wonderful job down there, and such a great distillery. All jokes aside, George Dickel is such a great distillery. The liquid that comes out of there is absolutely phenomenal. It's one of the best bang for your buck whiskeys you can buy. But yeah, she's doing a really, really phenomenal job down there.
And as Tabitha points out, redheads are the best. And David was taking some ginger cracks earlier tonight. Just one of those fun things.
Ginger cracks. We don't want to go there.
I'm not even going to go there.
No,
You don't want to know what that means in the United Kingdom.
Leave that well alone.
Oh, hell, it made Steve blush.
Oh, dear.
The highlight of the evening so far. So,
Steve, tell us about your consulting work, because we know that's what you've been focusing a lot on lately, and you've been able to actually keep busy during the pandemic and during all the cancer treatments, consulting around the world, right?
You know, when I retired, I didn't intend to do this, but I got asked to come to Australia. And when I gave out the Icons of Whiskey Awards at the Oval in Adelaide. And I met hundreds of Australian distillers who have no legal rules for making anything, by the way. And I did these, we call them badass sessions, where people could have me for 15 minutes and talk about stuff and maybe how to get their gin or their whiskey into America, and what did I think of the taste of it, and would it come see them. And of course, I was being compensated by the people at Whiskey Magazine for that. but it kept coming after I got back. And so I hit Australia, and then I had same thing happen.
Wait a second. You actually got a check from Whiskey Magazine?
Well, I know. No comment.
Okay, I'm just asking.
Easy, Tiger.
Be careful.
I'm kidding. Go ahead.
Gillespie. Wow.
This is getting spicy.
And,
I'm kidding. Of course, Christopher Coates is going to be with us next week on the podcast. And yes, most of my checks from Whiskey Magazine from when I was U.S. contributing editor did arrive relatively on time. So go on, Steve.
okay, I believe me, I understand. I'm very sympathetic. However, they've always been really good to me. And after they inducted me into the Hall of Fame, their Hall of Fame, that's a funny story in itself, because I was with Al Young and Bill from Makers. The three of us all got inducted at the same time. And Al and I joked about it. Ours was for the same juice, but that's another story. I miss him terribly because he was a very good friend.
Yes. And we should point out that Bullet for many years was made at Four Roses. That's the connection, if you're not aware of it.
Yeah, they Seagram's owned Four Roses, and Bullet, I can say this now because of my agreement not to talk about it is long gone. But they own Four Roses, and Seagram's wanted to come up with a Maker's Mark style brand, an image brand that was, not the typical, perfectly good whiskey that Four Roses had made, but a something a little higher end with a fancy bottle, like Seagram's always like to do. And they made a deal with Tom Bullitt, and they made a wonderful whiskey. It's 2 Four Roses strains, at least initially, and it was part of the family. And then the company was sold, and Diageo continued to have a contract to make it in its place of origin. So that's kind of how it goes, and I'm happy to tell people that there was nothing wrong with it. But in those days, we always signed NDAs saying when we buy whiskey from somebody else, we'll never tell anybody where it came from. So we didn't, and sometimes we got a little criticism for that. But it was a really good juice, and so. But I've known Al since before that, and Bill Samuels as well, and the three of us were up there on the stage getting our thing. But after that, I started getting all kinds of requests to come all kinds of places to do all kinds of things. And I thought, you know what? I'm not going to do this for free. So I started working with a consulting company who kind of manages this part of the business for me. And, constantly getting booked to do things for things. With the travel going down, it's all been long distance. It's all been Zoom. It's all been samples by Federal Express, who all of you know what I think of Federal Express. If it gets here, it's a miracle. So anyway, a lot of fun. And I do.
When it absolutely positively has to get there at some point in time.
Well, the FedEx ships booze, and the rest of them have a little trouble doing it. So they have been pretty good lately, I will say that. So I'll give them a little bit
better than UPS. Don't talk to me about UPS. I'm mad at them right now.
Yeah. I think they all have issues. The only people that get into my building are Amazon, and they seem to climb through the window, so it's not a big issue. But anyway, so sometimes I'll be busy for an entire week. Sometimes I won't have any time at all. And if it's easy and it's here in California, I'll sometimes drive out to them. If it's the stuff from Australia has a very hard time getting here, and the stuff from South Africa, it's almost I want to give up on that. But so I'll get asked to, what do I think it tastes like? What do I think about the bottle design? What do I think about the label? Am I saying the right things? Can we sell this in America? And we've had a bit of luck because the Americans now will accept 70 CLs, 700 milliliter bottles. So these small distillers and craft people don't have to switch glassware. They can just export it directly in its original package, which has opened a bit of market. It's just the money to do it is not really there. I mean, I've got one really great Australian gin I would love to see in the U.S. And it just is. It's just there. Everything they do is brilliant. It's called Karu, Karu, and they're lovely people. A young entrepreneurial couple, and they make everything from scratch out in the bush. And they got every kind of crazy Australian plant and animal out there. So it's just fun, but it's really good juice. So it slowed down with the cancer a little bit and with the COVID a little bit, but I still do it. Probably the biggest source of my income is venture capitalists who want to do a tasting, and I always pawn that off to somebody else because there are other people who do Zoom tastings like Gelfand and other folks out here that do a good job at that. So it doesn't float my boat, but these venture capitalists want to know: can we make money on this? Is it real? Is the stuff good? What do I think? Do I think anybody's going to buy it? It's called due diligence sometimes when they're about ready to make a big investment. And a couple of rather major distilleries, their accounting firms have used me as part of that package to do the due diligence. So it's good.
Nice.
It's a good thing. And I don't have to do everything. I can say no if I don't feel like it, or I'm tired, or, I am retired. I didn't intend to do any of this. So, but since I can't travel, it's interesting. Plus there's all the competitions. I still want to be, I like doing that. I know all these great people all around the world, and I really want to continue to be involved in it.
And if the check's clear, go for it.
Some of them do. By the way, you had Owen from Stranahan's earlier, and I don't drink a lot of whiskey these days for pretty good reasons. But
yeah,
I have this beautiful bottle of the Blue Peak that he talked about. San Francisco gave it a double gold. I think Whiskey of the World probably did as well. And it's just brilliant, actually brilliant. And it's under $40.
Mm-hmm.
I'm a great one for believing that whiskey should be enjoyable and affordable. I have my share of $1,000 bottles. In fact, I have a couple bottles of Oban 1969 that somebody's trying to, I think they're going to break into my house to steal it. They keep offering me a lot of money for it, but I don't want to let go. I love that one.
We've got a great question here from Dave Kuhn. Should it be illegal to sell empty whiskey bottles on places like eBay, where people sell old empty Pappy 23 bottles? And I wonder if people are taking advantage of unknowing bar patrons. Hell yes, I'd shut that stuff down in about 2 seconds flat.
I agree with you, honestly.
You're never gonna.
I try and tell certainly my team, if we're at a festival or wherever we're pouring anything of any value, when we get to the end of the bottle, to smash the neck before we throw it in recycling.
Yeah. Or really, really old vintage bottles we'll take back. We'll send them back to archive.
Yeah.
And they'll use them. We never ever leave them at shows.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean the recycling at the shows alone, you could take enough bottles out of there and counterfeit those and make a fortune theoretically.
Well, and I'm sure the guys here have had the same thing. When we're cleaning up at the end of some of the bigger shows, for example, we'll have people who've actually paying attendees at the show coming around saying, "Can I take your empties?" And they only ever want the empties of the really high end stuff, which is suspicious enough straight away.
Or like those Ardbeg Moors, like you've got off to your left hand there.
Well, yeah, I mean, we've stopped doing those pretty much. Certainly, we don't even ship them to the States.
Well, they're illegal in the States, right?
Well, they're illegal to sell. We were bringing them over full for Ardbeg Day in the early days, and then even through the company, and we weren't selling them. They would appear on eBay and stuff. So now we're sending them empty without the seal. And then if anyone internally wants to fill one so we can pour it at the event, that's fine. But a sealed 4.5 liter bottle is not coming over to the States anymore. That's for sure.
There's a special place in hell for these people that just take empty bottles and refill them up. As far as I'm concerned, just a special place in hell for those folks. And
I won't go into details because I'm not allowed to, but I have a bottle pretty much directly behind me. There's a bottle back there that I'm very suspicious about. I have to say, pretty confident it's not the real deal. Which I can't go into the details of the full story, but it thoroughly pisses me off, considering the amount of money I spent on it. Yeah.
And H. Twan says, you're telling me you don't have a Pappy 23 filled with water to impress house guests?
Well,
Dude. Or filled with Weller? No. Dude, no. I don't need to impress guests with a Pappy 23 filled with Weller. You come down here and you see this thing behind me with all the bottles. I don't need to impress anybody.
Don't take this the wrong way, guys. But I have one of those bookshelf doors coming into this room, and I've set it up so it really genuinely doesn't look like there's a room in there. And I've put a bunch of bottles that are the sort of bottles that if anyone broke into my house, it's the names. I've put the names up there. So I've got my sacrificial bottle of Mac and Johnny, and they're not criticizing the whiskeys. They're great whiskeys. But I know these are the whiskeys that will, because of their brand power, will satisfy any thief. And they'll hopefully not notice that this is actually a door into a whole load more whiskeys.
But
now I've let my secret out of the bag.
I would also add there, it's really about what people like and what the flavor is and the profile. And, you don't have to pour someone Pappy Van Winkle. You can pour them Old Grandad because it's a very fine whiskey.
Yeah.
So it's really about where their palate is at. It's not about impressing people with labels. It's about impressing people with flavor at the end of the day.
I just remember the early whiskey fests and whiskey shows, and you'd be behind the table really trying to talk to a dozen people at the same time, and then some very pushy person would come up and stick their glass in your face and, what's your oldest?
Yeah.
And then our oldest was often Lagavulin, and so at 16 years old, that's the oldest. I put the oldest. And they taste it and they make a face because they're not Peteheads. They don't understand. And this is terrible. I don't know why you're, it's like, I hated that stuff.
Steve, my favorite thing to do at festivals, if I'm behind the specifically Ardbeg booth and somebody says, give me your oldest. Well, the Ardbeg core range is, now we've got 5, but was always the Ardbeg 10, Ugadal, Corey Reckon. So only one of them had an age statement. So the oldest was the 10-year-old, and that's what I poured them. And then they looked at me funny. I'm like, well, that's what you asked for.
What's your favorite pet peeve at whiskey festivals when we get back to these things where people can come back and start tasting whiskeys? Is it the give me your oldest?
Yes. Second, and second place is those people at the end of the show who are just trying to hoover up anything off the table, whether it be a bit of whiskey, an empty that might be of value to them for some corrupt reason, or bits of what they think are point of sale material that clearly they can just help themselves to. I had a guy years ago pick up this is how long ago it was. The guy was halfway out the door with my BlackBerry because he saw that he'd seen that the screensaver I'd put on it was an Ardbeg screensaver. And I accosted him and he goes, sorry, I thought it was a giveaway. Yeah, we're just giving away Ardbeg Blackberries today to everybody. What? Unbelievable.
It's that LVMH budget.
Yeah. Something like that. Because the Ardbeg brand is known for having a massive budget.
I saw a question down there about chill filtration in E150A. You can chill filter, you cannot add spirit caramel.
If you want to call it a straight whiskey.
Yeah.
You can add it to non-straight whiskeys.
Yeah, but no spirit caramel. Even though it's made in Kentucky and then shipped to Scotland for the most part, because we use a lot of it in Scotch.
I've just seen a note there that's upset me. I didn't know. Matt said we lost a good venue in Texas this week. Trinity Hall closed its doors. That is sad. I did not know that. I'll have to speak.
Damn.
I literally did a whole bunch of virtual make it through. And as soon as they were open, I was in there doing in-person stuff. So hopefully, please tell me that's not true. That's awful.
I hope not, but it wouldn't surprise me given the issues that the hospitality industry has had these days. Crump the cask, Cole. I hate the hired reps for the day that know very little about the product they're handing out. And I know that's a pet peeve because there are some brands that hire, shall we say, booth people of indeterminate gender, of indeterminate whiskey knowledge, to flog their whiskeys for the night.
Mm-hmm.
And that's got to be a frustration for you guys as professionals who have done this stuff, to get stuck with, be sitting at the stand next to a person of either gender who is very cute, very attractive, and doesn't know bupkis about whiskey, but is getting all the attention.
I think we've all experienced that.
Yeah, but I think you have to see two lenses here. You have to see it from the point of like brand teams and marketing teams who go to trade shows, and they will see that dynamic. And, you know, humans can be somewhat myopic sometimes, and they will gravitate towards beauty rather than, you know, me. They will see like an attractive guy or an attractive female, and then they'll be drawn to that. And then if you want any more information on the brand, that's why you're there. So there's a weird juxtaposition goes on there. I personally don't have an issue with it. What I do have an issue with is if they aren't properly pre-trained before the show. So we're sent in to do what's called pre-training, and we'll take them through like the notes of the whiskey, and we'll take them through like the facts and the dates, and it's like, say this, don't say this. And then if they don't remember or stick to that, then you have to hang around and you have to kind of correct them throughout the course of the evening. But I mean, I'm not going to say necessary evil, but they're there for a reason.
And you're right. The training before the show, where we've all done them, and quite often, most often, even if they don't know a lot, they're motivated most of the time, taking notes. They're intelligent and they learn quick. It's the case though. You know, you've done them, I've done them, where it's been just in one ear and out the other. You know, and then you kind of start the show a bit pensive yourself because you're like, jeepers, I'm going to have to be on this person's shoulder, preventing them from saying anything silly. So I get it. Matt makes a good point there again about Texas. That in Texas you have to have a license to be actually physically, legally allowed to pour at any of these shows. And for me, being resident in Texas with a Texas driver's license, I have that license. Now you have to do a quick course and you get it. But I think you have to have a Texas driver's license to be able to apply to get that. So that means most ambassadors, and certainly anyone from Scotland coming in, aren't allowed to touch the bottles. We're absolutely not allowed to even touch a bottle at the shows in Texas, which means the necessary evil. Right there.
In San Francisco, we did a sort of plan to cultivate our what we called samplers, and create them, you know, with experience, so that we'd have them back at show after show and event after event. We did a lot of on-premise events, and it made a really serious business of making sure that these people were paid well and cultivated and treated right. And, you know, I had people working for me over 10 years, and some of them went to Scotland on their own. One of them, Angela Phillips, she and her husband got married over there. Another couple went and they spent 2 or 3 months visiting Scotland over the years and going to our distilleries. And our people were always very welcoming when I recommended them for a tour. They kind of got a special visit and met the distiller and took a bunch of pictures. So they really became pretty good brand ambassadors. And, you know, of course we had some new people, and they would pour, you know, here, have one of these, because some of the people come to those shows, that's all they want is to drink. So we let those people do that. And then we had brand ambassadors. And then if there was some crazy question, but we were repping 7, 8, 10 brands sometimes. And
I would say the thing that pisses me off more than way more than the issue of maybe having odd, brand promotional rep there who doesn't really know their stuff. The thing that really gets me is when I have a colleague standing next to me, usually female, I have to say, who is attractive and young, and the audience just assumes they don't know anything and will only talk to me. And I've done plenty of times, just go, talk to them. She knows as much as I do, if probably more. That really sometimes puts me into a bit of a rage. God,
Well, I can think, David, of you being out with, say, Karen Fullerton from the Glenmorangie team.
Karen, Davinia Small back in the day as well. I can think of, actually, I was thinking of a couple of female whiskey ambassadors who have moved on to other brands now and are, located globally now, who both started in New York as agency, part-time ambassadors, promotional ambassadors, and I watched them learn the ropes just the same as I did. But I saw them go through much more of that struggle to be respected than I ever did. I have to say, it happened a bit to me as well. It seemed to be that I flipped from, and we probably all know this, you flip from being told, you're too young, come on, you don't really drink it, you're too young to know anything about this, you don't really drink Scotch whiskey, do you? And it seems that you bat your eyelids and you're suddenly, he's too old, what do you want to listen to him for? And there's very little in between. But there was
speaking of this, David, you guys are actually looking for somebody on the East Coast of the U.S. now, right?
Yeah, I mean, I wasn't going to use this, but since you brought it up, I'll do my belief.
No, because I saw you posting for it saying, hey, look, we're looking for an ambassador. Yeah. If somebody wanted to actually do this for a living.
Yeah, we have a role open and actively recruiting for New York City-based Glenmoe and Ardbeg ambassador right now. And the ad is up on... blanking now, not Bev Force, the other one. But yeah, good. Just if you Google Glenmorangie Ardbeg brand ambassador in New York City job, it comes straight up. So yeah, if you're qualified and interested, we are.
But let's talk about the qualifications. What does it take? And all three of you can answer this. What does it take to be a good brand ambassador besides knowing a little bit about Scotch whiskey, frankly?
For me, it's the knowing a little bit is exactly it. It's more about an obvious infectious enthusiasm about the category. The rest of it can be learned and will come naturally with trips to Scotland, reading books, spending time with myself and Bill Lumsden and Colin from Ardbeg and all the rest. That stuff, if you're really into it, just you soak it up. That's not a problem. So passion is the number one thing for me, and then a bit of nous, how you present yourself, preferably a bit of experience with the industry, i.e., kind of the understanding the ins and outs of going into an account and what that takes.
I would also add to that empathy, understanding what the industry needs, understanding how to forge long-term relationships. Because you're not just an ambassador at a whiskey show, you'll be out in trade as well, doing staff trainings, helping to leverage business, helping to support local distributor partners. You're a Swiss Army knife of a character. So, it's not as one-dimensional as, you're just a show monkey and you just turn up and do the shows and do the seminars and then, stay in fancy hotels and fly to the next place. There's a lot of work to be done within the commercial aspect of the role. But, I completely agree with what David said there. It's more about the person than the knowledge, because you can train people up for sure. And if they have that kind of inert passion and they want to do a good job and you can see that spark with them, and it's
Totally.
a rare thing. Also, being able to have that resilience, because it's a tough job as well. You are traveling a lot. You're out late. You're up early. You're flying. You're on your own a lot. It's a weird world.
You can get into weird kind of spirals in terms of your mood and all the rest of it, because you're in front of large numbers of people who mostly you don't know at all or don't know well in all over the world. And then at the end of when the lights go off, you're back to a hotel room by yourself, and then up very early the next morning, sitting on a plane, thinking about things by yourself. You have to be able to, there's definitely a mental health aspect to it. And it may sound like people are saying, oh, cry me a river, you're staying in nice hotels and getting upgrades on flights and blah, blah, blah. The average lifespan in terms of work span of a brand ambassador doing this in the Scotch industry is about 2.5, 3 years, I think. So, the three of us have outlived that by a long way. And
Yeah.
And Steve, you're sitting there being quiet. Any thoughts here,
well,
Steve?
I come back to something Ewan said, because he's always exhibited this, and he used the word empathy. When I first met Tom Bullitt many years ago, and Bullitt was a Seagram's product, he mentioned to me something called the Seagram's Way. And that was, he'd go into the building and he knew the name of everybody who worked there by the time he left. And I was impressed because he said goodbye to the matron who took care of the bathroom on our floor and used her name. It's really a question of empathy and reaching out and connecting with people. I had one kid who worked for me as a sampler that I had let go years ago because he quit his job at Abercrombie. And I said, it's a good job. You're making a lot of money for very light work. He said, they wanted me to talk to people. Okay, those are his words. And it's like, you've got to engage with people. And I think in our business, particularly with our products, which are a little higher priced than some of the others, it was the relationship that made the sale. It wasn't the economics of it. So people wanted it because you made them want it and because they liked you. And if I were hiring anybody for brand ambassador, even somebody to stand behind a table at an event, that's the thing I would look for first. Knowledge, that's good. One of the things that irks me the most are some of the people that we get behind those tables at whiskey shows. They know everything and they don't shut up, and the customer wants to know something, not what you know. He's got a question, and his question is a good question, even though you think it's pretty mundane or stupid. And, you have to relate to people. And I think that's, to me, what it's all about, because you can know everything and still people don't like you. And it was a hard lesson to learn, because I'd go around with a Diageo sample bag, which eventually had 12 or 15 bottles in it. And early in the beginning, I would get them all out when I'd visit a liquor store or a bar. And I quickly learned that people got confused. Well, I don't know which one I really want. And that's a lot of money to buy all those things. So I learned quickly, one thing at a time, take it slow, focus. And, sometimes I get one placement, sometimes it'll end up with the whole 12 or 13 bottles, but it was always about the personal relationship with people. And I think the people who've lasted in the business, even though some of them have gone from company to company, working for different ones, and some major fuck ups sometimes. But their real strength has always been their ability to relate to and connect with their customers. I had people in San Francisco who'd buy my stuff or put it on the bar. And it certainly wasn't because we had the best price. It's because they believed in the product and they believed in us. So anyway, that's the end of sermon.
I would add
Dave. Go ahead, Ewan.
a footnote to that is you have to be, you have to have that sense of empathy, like I said before, but you also have to be a humanist, and you have to be someone who can read a room as well.
Yes.
Because you're out there and you're doing presentations sometimes to mixed audiences. Sometimes it's a 101 audience. Sometimes it's like super whiskey nerds. And you have to become really, really good at reading rooms. Like when people are starting to drift off, then you either dumb it down or you speed it up. And successful whiskey ambassadors are people who are very, very good at that. Because if you aren't tailoring your chat to the audience, you're going to lose the room. And once you've lost the room, you're in a tough spot. So being able to hold a room for hours sometimes is not easy. And it's exhausting as well. It takes a huge amount of effort to talk for hours. And you're tired at the end of it.
We've all had the experience, and we all know, all of us know when we finish a presentation how well we did. You have an innate feeling of, right, that one. When you walk off stage in front of a group and you've absolutely killed it, and you're on cloud nine, you're like punching the sky afterwards. Like, that just felt good. Everything just went so well. And there's other days we've all had them where, like, gosh, never quite clicked today. And those are okay. It's okay to have those every now and then, because you learn. You learn, and
but when you go back to your hotel room on your own, it's not great.
And no, it's not. You're like, oh God.
and that leads us to a question from Dave Kuhn. Is there an alcohol program for whiskey ambassadors, meaning dealing with the possibility of addiction? We're dealing with a substance that can be addictive.
No, there's no handbook to it.
No.
It's trial by fire, sink or swim. And if you have mentors, great. I worked on Masters of Whiskey as well with Steve, so we had some really great mentors there who would help like guide and steer people along. But there's other ambassadors out there who have nobody. They're like lone wolves, and there is no handbook, and you are exposed to lots of alcohol. You are exposed to have an expense budget, so you can eat in really fancy restaurants, and there's the calorific intake, there's the alcohol intake, there's staying up late, having to get up early, and it really takes its toll on you over the years. So learning to have some kind of balance, and but there's no handbook to it. There should be, but
there really should be.
Yeah, I mean, how do we keep ambassadors from going off the rails? Because as you point out, you're living off the expense account every night. And it's easy to, when you're drinking this stuff every frickin' night, to go overboard and to lose control.
It's whiskey never land. And you need to have a grounding. But no, there should be something in place. The industry as a whole should come together and have something in place that stops this, because it happens. And it does.
And we've all seen it. We've seen ambassadors that have gone off the rails and have been found, and I'm trying to be very careful here how I phrase this, but we found them, say, drunk at a rest stop somewhere behind the wheel.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Or having overindulged and having not quite done something really stupid, but done something moderately stupid. And it happens.
I rescued a very famous one who was passed out in an elevator at a hotel, just sitting on the floor with it propped up against the wall, going up and down. I think it is. I mean, we really have to be. I think the industry needs to be more proactive about it, because it is a problem. It really is, and not a huge one. I think if you're in this business for any amount of time, you realize that your job begins with sobriety in a way, because you have to be able to do your job well, and you can't do that if you're indulging the way your customers tend to. And I know ambassadors who, for example, never drink on the job. They might pretend to have a sip, but they don't. And they save it for later in the bar at the hotel afterwards when you get together with your friends, or other places when you're at a meal. But it's everybody's right. There is no real program for it. And I think, were I younger and a little more involved and actually still involved in the corporate world, I would probably advocate for that.
Yeah.
Just
I would say that it's gotten better.
It has.
As the cultural awareness, understanding, balance, mental health, fitness, things like that. It has got better from when we all started, where it was like you could run full tilt chaos, and there was no one there to tap you on the shoulder sometimes to say, hey, it's probably not a great idea having a quadruple whiskey with your lunch.
What?
Only quadruple?
Yeah, well, I was trying to tame it down a little bit. Sometimes you would have, extremely boozy lunches, and because you live in that bubble, it becomes the norm. And you will talk to, quote unquote civilians, and they'd be watching like in horror at the amount of alcohol that's getting consumed at one table.
Which reminds me, Ewan, when are we getting together for lunch at Keen's again?
Whenever you want. I'm in New York all the time. Make a date. I'll meet you there for a mutton chop.
Wait a second. You're going to New York and you're not stopping by here first on the way? I'm only on 295 just off the Jersey Turnpike going up to New York, for crying out loud.
Just doesn't Philadelphia count as a flyover state? Philly's a flyover state for me coming from Texas. Sorry.
That's true.
I do love Philly though.
And because as much fun as we have laughing about some of these stories, there are people who we can't really laugh because they wind up developing these issues.
Mm-hmm.
Mm-hmm.
And we really can't dismiss that. I don't think we need to really have some way to prevent those train wrecks from happening and prevent those people from, or to help the people and keep them from coming off the rails.
Well, that's what I was saying. There needs to be something where the industry comes together, and there is some guidelines, and there's also a support network put in place,
Mm-hmm.
because it just doesn't exist. And when you're effectively a lone agent sometimes, and you're out there and there's no one there to talk to you, and all you have is an American Express card, and you can go to any bar you want or any restaurant you want, and you're traveling 80% of the year, you don't have a mentor with you. And there should be something in place. And I feel very strongly about that, because everyone on this call has seen the dark side of this industry.
Yeah, definitely. I think we've all been lucky as well. We've all had that mentor, from my first months in the US as an ambassador. Anthony Burnett, who I don't know if you know, but Steve, you'll remember Anthony, who sadly passed away a couple of years ago. But he was, he was our first man in the US for the Glenmorangie Company all those years ago when we were, imported by Brown-Forman. So he was based in Louisville. And then, Robin Cooper and Davinia and actually Karen Fullerton were after that. And then when Karen moved to Jewers for a while, that's where the opening on the East Coast of the US came up, and that's when I moved to the States in 2005. But I was very lucky to have Davinia and Robin to talk to, kind of my sort of age group, and then Ant. Who really did an amazing job of taking me under his wing, albeit for a short period of time, because he retired with about 9 months of me starting. But it was he really looked after me for sure.
Yeah, and I think we have a certain amount of responsibility for the next generation who are coming into the industry as well. My son just recently started working in the whiskey industry, so he's now fourth generation of our family working whiskey. And,
you are so screwed.
Yeah, he now works.
I thought there was a restraining order against the Morgans.
He now works in Edinburgh at the Johnny Walker Experience. But yeah, they don't have it either. It's crazy, that even in this day and age, with all of the optics that we have on alcohol or whatever, mental health. There isn't like an industry-wide platform in place. It's like, this is what responsible drinking looks like. This is what, a good mental health plan would look like, or good exercise plans and things like that. They aren't there, and they really should be.
And even down to like trying to organize your crazy travel schedules so that you're getting enough sleep, because that's an absolute killer as well. And for me, the biggest one at the height of my travels, the days where I was just a zombie. I hadn't slept more than an hour or two a night for weeks on end, just with the dinner finishing at X o'clock, and then an hour drive back to the hotel, and then a really early start the next morning to get on another plane. The trips out to Asia with the jet lag and such like. I remember being meeting up with Bill Lumsden, and I'd just flown into Seattle from wherever I'd been in the States, and Bill had flown in from Scotland, and we just met up for a quiet pint and a bite to eat in a pub somewhere in Seattle. And we were just sitting across a high top table, having a chat, having a beer. And I was mid conversation and I fell asleep. And I've never done anything like it before. I fell asleep whilst talking to Bill, and Bill shook me, because apparently I went straight from what I was talking about into a kind of dream state. And I started talking about the dream in a kind of just gibberish. It wasn't about the alcohol. I'd had, about that much out of one pint. I was just absolutely exhausted.
That's how your suit coat wound up in your shoe, right?
Oh, yeah, that story. Yeah, that story is not for broadcast, but yes.
You've told it before. You told last time you were on.
Oh gosh, yeah, I did end up actually in Dallas, maybe having a few too many years ago, and getting back to the hotel, waking up in the morning feeling absolutely terrible, of course, and then rushing to try and get to my plane. And I was trying desperately to find my suit jacket, and I couldn't find it anywhere. And I was going through everything under the bed in the room, top of the cabinet. I called down to the front desk, asked someone to look for it there, asked them to come up and help me look for it. Couldn't find my suit jacket anywhere. So in the end, I gave up, packed my bags, went to the airport, got home, felt bad for the next day as well. It was a pretty bad hangover. And I finally, a couple of days later, decided to unpack my suitcase. And the very last thing I did was I took my suit shoes out of the bottom of my suitcase and rolled up like a flannel, as tight as possible, shoved into one of my shoes with the laces all pulled out, was my suit jacket, which I had, for some reason, put in there. Don't ask me why. There we go.
It happens.
Yeah, I mean, it must have happened to everyone, right?
Yeah, I think we've all had some slippage. It does surprise me, though, that an industry that prides itself on please drink responsibly doesn't have even kind of a rudimentary introductory sort of program. Like, I could imagine a mandatory training course that took an hour or two that talked about the problem and what are the steps and what are the resources and who in the company does this, because we all had employee benefit programs that allowed us to get mental health. At least a few visits.
I mean, talking from a Moet Hennessy perspective, and not just a brand ambassador perspective, as a Moet Hennessy USA employee, we do have programs in place for mental health and for substance abuse help. So there are in place for that. But a lot of ambassadors aren't directly employed. So that's
it's exactly the same for Diageo. Like, all staff go through mandatory training like that, alcohol training, mental health training, stuff like that. But then the ambassador world, this kind of the thin red line, as it were, doesn't really get. And we have a very different job to sales reps or people who work in the distributor network, things like that. The ambassador role is very unique, and you have high exposure to everything.
And a lot of these folks are independent contractors that don't have the exposure to an HR type program or an employee assistance program because they're freelancers essentially, right?
Some are, yeah.
Well, I mean, there could be a program though. It
Yeah.
wouldn't take a lot to have a basic sort of introductory program that gets people at least aware. But it is a unique job, that's for sure. And early on, I made myself a mess a couple of times, and I learned seriously from it. So I think it's we all know an ambassador or two who's got fired because they got a DUI. I mean, it can end your career. So
Yeah.
So,
Well, let's end on a happier note.
yeah.
Yes,
Yeah.
that would be
Let's
good.
end on a happier note tonight. What are you most looking forward to the next 6 months to a year? And Steve, I know that you have much bigger goals than just being able to get back out on the road. But let's start with you.
Well, it's difficult to come to terms with having a kind of cancer that has a very poor outcome prognosis. So I have to deal with that, and I have a lot of things I need loose ends to take care of, and I want to talk to people. I could be here another 10 years. I mean, it's not it's no guarantee of anything.
And we are hoping you're here for another 10, 20 years.
So, it's just again, a challenge. And I think one of the challenges is the COVID thing has just made isolation mandatory in a way. And that's become, as one of the reasons I'm with you today. It's I'm really tired of it. Okay. And it's very, that'll be the biggest challenge. So I want to figure out how I can get out there and, maybe do a little more of this. And I'm looking forward to traveling again at some point because I've got, things I want to do and people I want to see, places I want to go. So, but one day at a time, that's all I can do. So.
Ewan?
This is an easy one. I'm looking forward to going back to Scotland and seeing my wee boy and seeing my dad and friends and family and hanging out and having, good fish and chips, because the fish and chips in this country suck. And so,
Hey, sorry, dude. We call them fries over here. Sorry.
well, we invented them. We can call them whatever we want. I'm looking forward to that, and looking forward to traveling more, getting out West Coast, seeing Steve, bumping into just the network, because we all lived on the road and we all saw each other all the time.
Yeah.
And, because of COVID, that all came to a halt, and it really is a big family, albeit we said at the beginning a dysfunctional one. So I'm very much looking forward to hanging out with these folks again.
Yeah.
David?
Ewan pretty much said word for word what I was going to say. Traveling more, getting back to Scotland and seeing my family. That's by far number one. Ewan, I don't know how old your folks are, but they're probably the same sort of age as mine. And every month lost in this darn pandemic is a month we can't get back. So I want to get back. I want to get a pint at a picnic table somewhere with my dad and fish and chips. Absolutely, that's pretty much exactly the same thing.
Well, guys, let's just look, as Matt Wohler points out, together, not together apart. Guys, I can't wait till we can all get together again and have a dram together because, hell, I've missed you guys. I haven't seen you guys in a year and a half, for Christ's sakes.
That's true. Yeah, that's true.
And it sucks, frankly. And I can't wait till the day comes we can all be back together again, share a dram or a cold pint after the show, because there is that tradition that we don't talk about much of getting together for a cold beer after a night of drinking whiskeys at a whiskey festival.
Responsibly,
of course, but that we've all missed. And just being able to sit here like this for the last couple of hours and just shoot the breeze.
Yeah.
We have killed 2 hours of your time tonight that nobody's ever going to get back, but to hell with that because we can. So thank you to our guests. First, Owen Martin from Stranahan's, who joined us earlier. Steve Beal, my brother, take care of yourself. Do what you have to fight this damn disease. And we're there behind you. You tell us what you need. We'll be there for you, my brother.
Appreciate that.
Absolutely.
Ewan Morgan, David Blackmore, guys, we'll see you on the road soon. And we'll call it a night there. Thanks for watching. We'll see you next week. Good night, all.
Cheers.
Good night.